Good evening, everybody. Thank you. In 1991, mainstream America had not begun to have the urgent public conversation we are having today about sexual harassment in the workplace, much less about the intersections of gender, race, and class that so often underlie and enable it. Anita Hill testified before the Senate Judiciary Committee in the confirmation hearings of Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas, with no widespread viral movement like Me Too surrounding, supporting, and empowering her. And yet, in spite of the pain and humiliation it entailed and the risk it posed to her accomplished career, Anita made the astonishingly brave decision to step out alone, forcing a vital voice into what had until then been an oppressive silence. Addressing the 14 white men who made up the Senate Judiciary Committee, she was talking to a wall of power, fortified through centuries of bias that perpetuated the sense that women and people of color scarcely matter in the realm of American politics. Her action shook and began to loosen the foundations of that wall. For her, those hearings were just a beginning. Throughout her career as a professor, lawyer, writer, and author, she has remained a fearless and unwavering champion of women's rights and has continued to use her voice to lead us in the fight against harassment and abuse. As an organization that protects and amplifies the voices that those in power seek to silence, it is fitting that PEN America honors Anita Hill tonight. The Courage Award recognizes that those who dare speak out against entrenched power deserve not just the defense that PEN offers all over the world, but also celebration. We must chip away at the repercussions of speaking out, the fear, the ostracization, the isolation, the backlash, while continuing to fight for a world in which those who do so are met with respect and admiration. Anita Hill had no safety in numbers. She was one woman calling times up decades before the wider society was ready to blow that whistle. She made her accusations against a man who would sit on the nation's highest court and wield power for decades to come. 28 years later, a paradigm shift is occurring. There is an unstoppable wave of personal and societal revelation and truth-telling that emulates Hill's initial heroic act. With the Me Too movement, the Time's Up movement, we are speaking together. People across the country and around the world, myself included, have drawn inspiration from Anita Hill's message. As chair of the Hollywood Commission on Eliminating Sexual Harassment and Advancing Equality, Hill has now brought her leadership to the field in which I have made my own career, and in which I too decided to speak up about my own experience, and in which I am committed to advocating against sexism and harassment. In honoring Anita Hill, PEN America also seeks to fortify the wills of those who follow in her footsteps, speaking out even when they would rather avoid the glare of the spotlight and the years or even decades of scrutiny that can persist long after the cameras have dimmed and the headlines have faded. Thank you, Anita Hill, for so boldly demonstrating to women in all fields that raising our voices in public and in the chambers of power is essential to our efforts to make widespread change. Your courageous, groundbreaking work is an example and a benefit to us all. Before we welcome Ms. Hill, please watch this short video which cannot fully depict all that she has done.
Supreme Court nominee Clarence Thomas.
Clarence Thomas.
The Senate will confirm this able man promptly.
Professor, do you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
It was almost 30 years ago when the national spotlight turned to a relatively unknown Yale Law School graduate.
My name is Anita F. Hill, and I am a professor of law at the University of Oklahoma.
Professor Hill stood before the Senate Judiciary Committee to reveal private and painfully personal information.
He asked me to go out socially with him. What happened next and telling the world about it are the two most difficult experiences of my life.
Clarence Thomas ran into trouble today and what had seemed to be a certain confirmation as a Supreme Court justice.
Anita Hill.
Anita Hill said she was embarrassed and humiliated by sexually explicit remarks made by her boss.
Supreme Court nominee Clarence Thomas.
The most sensational hearing since Watergate.
Reluctantly thrust into the spotlight, she remained resilient.
How reliable is your testimony? Are you a scorned woman?
Why in God's name would you ever speak to a man like that the rest of your life?
You are not now drawing a conclusion that Judge Thomas sexually harassed you.
Yes, I am drawing that conclusion. It would have been more comfortable to remain silent, but when I was asked by a representative of this committee to report my experience, I felt that I had to tell the truth.
Professor Hill's courage resonated with a wave of women who were all too familiar with her story.
America's women really want to see this body start doing something for them than to them.
The sexual harassment storm around Clarence Thomas is intensifying. The battle over his Supreme Court nomination has now triggered a nationwide debate about sexual harassment on the job.
Stop Thomas now! Stop Thomas now!
Well, I'm glad that she finally came out and said something about it.
Most of us don't understand what sexual harassment is.
The nomination of Clarence Thomas of Georgia to be Associate Justice of the United States Supreme Court is hereby confirmed.
Professor Hill started a conversation on sexual harassment, but it would take 25 years before her lone voice became that of many.
6 more women now claim Ailes sexually harassed them.
Weinstein fired.
The head of Amazon Studios has been suspended. Uber promises an urgent investigation into sexual harassment claims.
We see Professor Hill's courage in the women who are speaking out today.
You told the world that time's up on violence.
We can right everything that has been wrong.
Time's up on the female condition.
She continues the fight today as chair of the Hollywood Commission on Eliminating Sexual Harassment and Advancing Equality, and as a legal scholar.
Good morning. I'm Anita Hill. I'm a university professor. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, thank you. Dessert is waiting. Thank you all. I am truly overwhelmed. This has been a wonderful evening, and to be in the same group with Richard and, where are you? Bob. It's just amazing. There are so many people I want to thank, and I will just start with my family, Chuck Malone, my partner in life and love, and my brother, Ray, and his partner, Don. Ray surprised me. I was not expecting to see him tonight, and through the work of PEN America, it was arranged, and I'm just so proud to be here with him and to represent our family here tonight. Of course, we all want to thank Suzanne and Jennifer for all of the work that they do. And Lupita, for that wonderful, warm and gracious introduction, and for just being Lupita, right? Yeah. So, for nearly a century now, and you all know this, but I think it's worth hearing again, PEN America has stood as a staunch guardian of literary expression and human rights and more. As a descendant of a people who just a few generations before me were by law prohibited from learning to read and write, tonight's honor is particularly meaningful. By virtue of her race, my maternal grandmother, born in 1870, was never offered a public education and therefore never learned to read or write. But she saw to it that my mother, our mother, Ray, born in 1911, went to school, and my mother read throughout her life, mostly the Bible, her Sunday school lessons, Reader's Digest, and the Okmulgee, Oklahoma Daily Times, our local newspaper. And my mother wrote. She wrote letters to me regularly during my college years, and her letters typically chronicled farm life, church life, and family life. Though she passed away years ago, when I read her letters, I hear her voice. Yet I also wonder what all she might have written if she had felt truly free to express all aspects of her life. In 1991, under the glare of intense political and media scrutiny, I shared more of what it is, the whole experience, the entirety of experience of being a woman in the workplace in particular. But I was also sharing the experience of what it's like to be Black. And finally, to be a Black woman facing sexual harassment. I testified, but soon learned that my right to speak freely about the truth of my experience was, in fact, limited. I will say that as I was under the scrutiny of media, in the end, it was media, one outlet, that gave me hope very early on that my life would not always be limited, that my ability to speak out would, in one way or another, become protected. And it was that media was a woman's magazine, Glamour magazine. And it was the editor, Ruth Whitney, who saw to it that I was recognized in that moment, weeks after the hearing, which was an act of courage in and of itself. journalistic courage. And Cindy Levy from Glamour magazine is here tonight. And so I want to just proudly thank Glamour for all you've done. With or without Glamour magazine, people ask the question, they've started asking me really back in 1991, would I testify again? Would I do all this again? And the answer is always, yes, I would. And over 28 years, you get a chance to think about why that answer is true. And there are a number of reasons that I say, yes, I would testify again, in part because I'm a lawyer, and I believe in the sanctity and the integrity of our nation's highest court. And I believe that that is only as true, the integrity is only as true and complete as the members who are on the court. And yes, I would testify again. I also would testify again because I am really a product of some of the decisions made by the Supreme Court in my lifetime and just before my lifetime. I call myself a Brown versus Board of Education baby, and many of you who are here tonight are as well. Regardless of your race, you have been impacted by that case. The Supreme Court matters, and so yes, I would testify again. And finally, I say I would testify again because I believe in equal justice under the law in its broadest sense, and in this one detail, and that is that every individual, regardless of age, race, sexual identity, disability, religion, color, gender, or gender identity, has the right to be schooled, work, walk the streets, and live in their homes free from gender violence. It did not take 28 years, but it did take more than the hearings. But I today am here to say that I have my voice. And my ancestor story, even though that I've only told a small portion of it, reminds me that I must never take having my voice for granted, and I must never abuse it. It's taken generations to gain this privilege, the privilege that I have to write and to speak out with the truth, and to speak truth to power. It's taken that long, and I will never, ever give it up. So I want to thank PEN America. This honor and your unwavering support for journalism, for writing, and the people who do both jobs will enable me to continue on the path, which I believe is the path to move another generation closer to fairness, equality, and justice. This is an aspiration I share with Lupita and millions of others whose individual and collective voices have become known as the Me Too movement. This is the dream, I hope, that I share with you in the audience here tonight. Not only for tonight, but in the future, in the days, in the weeks, in the years to come. I will close by saying we are determined that change will come. And I will borrow a phrase or some words from one of my heroes, the civil rights leader, Ella Baker. I will stay on this path because we who believe in freedom, in free expression and who believe in human rights shall not rest until they come for everyone. Thank you and good night.